In today's world, people feel lost in a sea of ideas. Which ones should we accept? Stay tuned because you're listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. Here is your host, Kurt Jarris.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here on another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. Very nice to be with you here. It's a heat wave in Chicagoland. I am in shorts and a t-shirt, and Chris is like, where's my parka? Actually, the office here in downtown West Chicago stays pretty cool with the AC. We've got an interesting arrangement where we've got sort of a storefront, and then the thermostat's over in the guy's office behind us, so it's just kind of fun how things work out. But hey, the rent is cheap, and we are here, and we're very thankful for those that have supported us through the years and have afforded us the opportunity to have an office space here and a studio, I guess we can call it, with a green screen even over there, which is pretty neat. Well, we've got a fascinating conversation coming up on our program today, and so we're going to just really jump right into it. Not too many announcements, other than just keep on the horizon the Defenders Conference. 2019 is going to be October 18 and 19. We're looking at gospel differences, and like last year, we've brought in 4 different perspectives to look at the alleged genocide commands in the Old Testament. This year, we're keeping that same format. We're bringing in 3 different perspectives on gospel differences, and I think, Chris, maybe to start as a monologue to the conference, I'll have to talk about, yes, there are differences in the Gospels. For many people, they think there aren't, and so I think I'll give like a 20-minute description, and then I'll just dismiss the conference, and I'll let people be, they can just sort of be all confused. No, it'll be a great opportunity. Last year we had folks come from, it was like 8 different states, I think, something like that, and we would love for you to join us in Chicagoland. Really, what Defenders is doing, I want to say, is becoming a premier event in terms of the quality. If you want to come for a weekend in Chicago, stick around for an extra day on the Sunday and go look at the city and then head on back home. But it's a great vacation opportunity, wonderful content that weekend, Friday night, Saturday, October 18 and 19. We'd love to see you there. More details, you can go to thedefendersconference.com. Well, our guest for today is a longtime acquaintance of mine. We both went to Biola University, and we've taken some different paths along our way. And I've got some questions I want to hear from him, get an update from him on his worldview journey. And then late last night, he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, you're going to be in the hot seat as well. I've got some questions for you." So this, I think, is going to be a fascinating conversation. And so our guest today is Dante Stack. Dante is the host of 365 Honest Questions About the Bible, and he's the author of a number of different books. 2 books, Fun with Jesus, A Manic Odyssey Through the Extra Books About Christ, and Fun with the Apocrypha, a merry excursion through the extra books of the Bible. And then he's also got this great quadrilogy, if I said that right, quadrilogy, something like that, right, Dante? The Solve the World series, which is a podcast turned novel. So, Dante, thanks for joining us on our program today.
Hey, so this Defenders series, or excuse me, this Defenders
the conference. Yeah.
Do you get people coming to it thinking that it's the Netflix show?
I think for some people it is like a Netflix show. They want to binge it, and we do put a time limit.
Like a deaf or a blind guy that has like extra good hearing, walking up and doing all the stuff. Do you know about this? The Defenders Netflix show?
Oh! I see. It's a Marvel reference. Right? You're talking about that with like, Daredevil and Jessica. Yeah. Well,
right. So I would assume you have some crossover there with your demographics.
Well, that would be neat, but I don't think there is. No. Yeah. Defenders, they're defending New York City, and I guess we're kind of defending the Christian worldview. But what makes it really fascinating about our conference is it's different perspectives on how to tackle these subjects. And so, like, for example, last year, Dante, we did the event on divine genocide, the alleged divine genocide. And one of the
that sounds super interesting.
which, if you want to watch, it's available on Vimeo. But one of the perspectives by Kenton Sparks was fascinating. He basically said, yeah, what the Israelites did then was wrong. And so he sort of takes an approach that says we need to look at their worldview and what they thought they were perceiving, but that, now that we have a new covenant and that God has revealed himself more in Christ, we know we can go back and look at some of the things maybe they did that were mistaken. So interesting perspective. I don't.
So did you have the? It was good for them all to do that because they were just killing Nephilim, or
not Nephilim, but there was one perspective, Clay Jones, which basically said, a traditionalist view that, hey, God commands what is right, and so God has his own reasons for why he would tell Israelites to do that.
Oh, come on, man! You didn't have the cool crossbreed, blood, weird ethno perspective.
The Nephilim? No, I don't. I mean, I know that was part of it, but no, not.
Walton brought it up at one point.
Yeah, Walton probably. Yeah.
There was a question.
We could have had Michael Heiser, but John Walton was there. So we had four guys: Clay Jones, Kenton Sparks, John Walton, and Paul Copan. Copan takes a warfare rhetoric view approach, like how if you ask me how the Cubs do yesterday, I say, oh, they got slaughtered. Well, I'm not communicating that 9 guys were dead on the field. But now, that was warfare, so there were dead people, yes, but the question is what type of people and all of that.
Which, if your audience hasn't picked up on this yet, I am most assuredly going to be one of the top 5 most ignorant and or stupid guests you've had on so far.
I don't think that's true.
I'm going to just throw in my card of being relatively ignorant on all things.
He's humble as well.
Except that when the Cubs traded with my team, the Padres, to get Rizzo, and you guys gave us Andrew Kashner.
Yeah, you're still bitter about that, aren't you?
I haven't really gotten over that.
Yes, I'm a big Cubs fan, so yeah, I certainly do understand that. I wasn't sure what sports. I mean, you've lived in a number of different places, and so I don't know. I didn't know what type of sports fan you were, or if you had any affiliations. So, Padres.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Diego County. So,
okay,
and
this is a good place to start.
And if you think about it, right, in baseball, you've got the Angels, but you don't know if they're fallen or good angels. They're not the Michaels, so you can't trust that. You got the Devil Rays, that can't be good. You got the Yankees, which is kind of playing to our north-south stuff, and then a bunch of animals. So really, the only righteous choice out there would be to choose the Padres as your spiritual leaders in baseball.
Oh, that's fascinating. I've got an argument. So that's a fascinating argument you make. I have what if I call it the Juris rule of sports? So for those that are consistent viewers, they know I lean towards a conservative framework. I'm not partisan, but I do have a political philosophy. So the Juris rule of sports is this: if you are watching like a Super Bowl or the NCAA tournament or something like that, and you don't have a horse in the race, but you need to decide which team to root for, the Juris rule of sports says pick the team from the more conservative state because they'll sell more memorabilia and it will help the microeconomy. Because from my perspective,
that didn't take the turn I expected.
Well, but look at it from either political perspective. Let's say you're fiscally liberal or something like that. You want your society to succeed, so you want to root for the economy to do well. So that's.
But couldn't you also go the other perspective of you should root for more my inclination, and I would assume a good majority of people is to root for the underdog or the team that's never accomplished anything, because perhaps you'll bring...
Certainly, yes, but sometimes you don't have underdog stories. You've got, it was like the Dodgers, what was the World Series last year?
Dodgers, Red Sox.
Yeah. I don't want either of those teams to win. So what do I do?
being a Padre fan, I have to be against the Dodgers. But if I wasn't, then you would have to go Dodgers. I haven't won since '89, which is, I would have been 3. So all of our brethren in Biola who were native LAans, they're dying of thirst out there in the.
I think the term would be native Los Angelinos, right? Is that the? At any rate, okay, so. We just talk about sports the rest of the show.
This is going well.
All right, so Dante, as you mentioned, we both went to Biola back some 10 years ago. You were a year older than me, I think.
I'm an 86er.
I'm an 87er, so yeah, I think you're a year older in graduating. So we had the opportunity to meet through a fellow that was promoting the mission sending organization. His name was Peter Gill of Avant Ministries, and we both connected with him individually, and then we had lunch together, and lo and behold, you decided you wanted to go to Europe
So I didn't. I decided, I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Okay.
But I want to be in missions. I've never been on the mission field, so I just was like, Avant, you tell me where to go. And so I hitched my wagon to the organization, and then they sent me to Europe.
Yes, and so you spent how many years over in Slovenia? 5. That's a big commitment. That you spent more time in Slovenia than at Biola.
I've never done the math there. Interesting.
I mean, unless you were one of those slower guys and you took 5 years.
No. Clean.
But okay, so here's what's interesting. What was your major at Biola? I think it was film.
Yeah, I was a double major. So this isn't true, but I like to say it.
Okay.
I felt like I was the most conservative guy in the film program.
Okay.
But then I whittled my way into the biblical studies department as well, and I always felt like I was the most liberal person in the room there.
Yeah.
So I ended up being a double major, mostly because I didn't want to take Spanish as a foreign language, so I signed up for Greek.
Yeah. And
then once you have that and you already have the minor at Biola, it's super easy to take like 4 more classes and you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you spent 5 years in Slovenia, reaching by and large an unreached people group. Unreached, I say, because post-Soviet Union, I mean, this is a lot of Eastern European countries are.
So 0.8% is evangelical.
Yeah. And as folks know, I think just maybe last month we had an interview about the Czech Republic, a missionary there, and it's a similar situation. So yeah, post-Soviet Union was a place by and large unreached with the gospel. But so you've gone on an interesting faith journey, at least from what I've gathered here, and I brought you on the program so I could even just learn more about it. You go from being a missionary, but then you had some doubts arise, or you've had the doubts all for a long time. How did that play into your journey?
So let me answer your question by not answering your question. So when you invited me on, there was the little niggle in my heart, if you will, because I have a certain perspective or idea in my head of what apologists are and what apologists do.
And hopefully you've got a view that I can show you is different than what I'm like.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting here. So my view of apologists are more of the Kirk Cameron strain of I am very certain about the things I believe, and the closer you walk into certainty, the more likely we are to mesh or come to a consensus. And so my as an apologist, my form of evangelism then would be speaking about truth and going through syllogisms. And to me, that I am never anywhere close to certainty, and B, like I haven't seen the fruit of that.
Yeah.
So tell me where I'm wrong. my perspective on how I view.
Well, I in much of what you had to say there, I don't think you were wrong. In fact, I think I've critiqued Kirk Cameron a couple times in the podcast's history for making very poor art, very poor film. You, as a film guy, would know that. I mean, a movie that preaches at people isn't art. So I don't think he's the best cultural apologist.
No, but all right, William Lane Craig.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So WLC, I think is
Ooh.
That's what folks in the apologetics world call him, WLC. He's a prolific philosopher. I mean, I think when you look at his academic credentials, they sort of speak for themselves, and a lot of people respect him even if they don't agree with him. And I think he's had a lot to offer and bring to the table. But at the same time, it's geared towards some people. Other people aren't interested in the syllogisms, but I would argue they think in the same concepts. They look at the stars and they think, where did we come from? And when William Lane Craig talks about the Kalam cosmological argument, he's talking about that same source. He's just doing it in a different way, a different format, a different audience. But sure, by and large, many people instead they look to the stars and they think, man, I'm just a small little puny ant in the universe. I mean, we're smaller than an ant when we're thinking about the universe on a relative scale.
So would the analogy be apt then to say, if we're talking, say, about poetry, William Lane Craig, WLC, would be the Shakespeare, and your common person on the street is a Tupac or an Eminem or some form of, street artist, whereas they're really speaking, they have the same goal, but they're speaking in a
different languages,
refined or more authentic.
Yeah, that might be a fair analogy. I mean, I have to think about it more, but that might be fair. But of course, WC is not a poet. But yeah, in terms of an analogy, that could be right. And a lot of people don't like reading Shakespeare. It's a smaller audience that does.
So I guess it's a little bit.
But let me say this though too. William Lane Craig is surely much different than Kirk Cameron in terms of epistemology. So Kirk Cameron and his level of certainty type thing is like Ray Comfort level presuppositionalism.
Ray Comfort, that was the name I was trying to think
Yeah. And William Lane Craig does not share that same type of epistemology. WLC is more modest in the claims that he makes, presenting like the argument for the resurrection and things like that. So, yeah, certainly not. I'm not a fan. I call Ray Comfort an evangelist. I wouldn't call him an apologist.
Okay, fair enough.
But even then, sometimes the evangelistic method, to be a good orator, you got to know your audience. And sometimes there are some methods of Christianity which may have worked 30 or 40 years ago in this country, but are no longer relevant. They no longer apply. Preaching fire and brimstone on the street corner, I don't think works very well in a relativistic society. So hopefully that answers your question. Maybe, I don't know if you've got a follow-up or not.
Yeah, well, I guess so I'm tracking with you, and I certainly see, I don't mean to denigrate apologists, and it's more.
Well, it sounds like you've got some good, you have some valid worries here about at least some styles of apologetics and the way it's done.
On a personal level, it's so I just finished this book that I call Fun with Jesus, which was just me reading translations of
New Testament
non-canonical.
Apocrypha. The New Testament Apocrypha?
Specifically, not epistles, so accounts of that had something to do with Jesus. And you get into the Gnostic era, and it just struck me over and over again, like, okay, the Gnostics are really into this idea of an ascent to a certain knowledge. Mm. And that, I guess because I was inundated with that for a few months, like this idea of like, you need to arrive at a certain idea, or you need to arrive at this certain level of knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, strikes me now as like, that's not the form, that's not what Christ talked about.
Yeah.
And you see a panoply of genres and a panoply of ways that the Bible expresses itself. And when the apologist in my head is always coming at it from one perspective alone, that feels like, and this is not true, but I say a lot of not true things, a neo-Gnosticism in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly can understand that, and I would caution against that sort of, to use a big term, tautological certainty. This 100%, you have to be 100% certain. The scriptures never talk about that, but there is a sense of confidence. So, and whenever we want to assent to any idea, like let's say you're trying to convince me the earth is flat, right? You are going to present arguments, and you're going to want me to get to a certain level where I say, okay, yeah, the earth is flat, So there is a base, if we take some other example, let's say we're trying to reach people with the gospel. There's a certain level where I want to get someone to say, yeah, I think Jesus is the Messiah. And then I want them to think, too, about what that means for their lives, right, to become a disciple of Jesus. Even that's not guaranteed, because sometimes it's a matter of the will with people. But there is a certain level of maybe someone's certainty I do want to reach, but I don't think it has to be, 100%. And that's just not the way we live our lives either. We're not 100% certain when I get in that car to drive home that I'm going to make it home. We're just not. And so to expect that of our religious views, I think is unwarranted. So I mean, I agree with you here against the concern of this epistemology that we have to have this crazy high level of certainty. But I think a lot of what some apologists do and say is to get people to that, a strong level of confidence in the Christian worldview.
Well, to make a really bad pun / joke, what you're saying is very Ray comforting to me. Moving on. All right, what was your initial question?
Well, I think we were chatting. You had a concern about a certain apologist. You conveyed your perception of apologists to be, Kirk Cameron, Ray Comfort style. And I don't think there are. And one of the apologists I work with, Dr. Mike Lacona, he has a ministry called Risen Jesus, and he's a very down-to-earth guy and has talked about his doubts and continues to talk about them openly with people. He's someone who's wants to go wherever the truth is. So there are other types of apologists out there that aren't those style. So, all right. So I wanted to ask you about your podcast, the 365 Honest Questions About the Bible. And so when did you start thinking about doing this, and how did it come about? And what are some examples of some of those honest questions?
So that one is defunct, by the way. Stopped that more or less a year ago. For me, I've always been the Thomasian type of believer and follower of Christ. So as I've hopefully matured, one of the ways I feel closer to God is to voice every doubt and to think it through, talk it through. Because if I don't, then it's just sitting there and it eats at me, or it starts to have an impact on my decision making. And so I need to do something with that. And if it's a real problem, I need to at least think it through, talk it through, and get to a point where it's like, okay, the biblical view of sex in the Old Testament is still super problematic for me. So now that I've talked this through, I'm going to put it in a new category of super problematic. If I think about things and I don't write it down, or I don't have a conversation about it, then I get stuck in like a loop. And I really just have the same thought like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So being able to try to organize my thoughts and put it out there was, I mean, I didn't really care if anyone listened to that podcast.
But it was, many people did.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I would say for me that it was a form of worship.
Yeah.
That's why I did it and really enjoyed doing it.
I know Thomas gets a bad rap among many Christians, the nickname Doubting Thomas. But I prefer the nickname Truthful Thomas. He wanted to pursue the truth, and he wanted to know what was really true. I mean, he's like, I'm not going to believe it till I see and touch, the risen Lord.
Yeah, and then when he does, he calls him God, the first person to say that about Christ. So, my Lord and my God.
And there's nothing wrong. Jesus never scolds him. He says, no, you shouldn't have believed that. Jesus lets him touch him. So to me, there's nothing wrong with having these doubts. And I think there are many Christians that think, they ask, is doubting sinful, right? Because I think they have an experience very similar to what you have here, where you talk about this circle where you'll just keep thinking about it and thinking about it. And it's like you don't know how to get out of it. But you found a way to organize your thoughts and to think about them, perhaps in a constructive manner. And
sometimes less constructive, but
yeah. I wanted to ask you. So what you talked about, say an Old Testament view of sexuality. There are many. I want to validate that there are many good concerns, questions, doubts. Sometimes though, we also find ourselves having doubts which don't strike me as worth having that sort of cycle over. Let's take an easy proposition, if I may. So for folks that present me with a deep skepticism, and I'm not saying this is you because I think maybe you'll agree with me here. I say, well, how do you know there are no McDonald's on Mars? Well, yeah, of course there aren't any McDonald's on Mars. Now, history is a lot more difficult than the present because there's a lot we don't know about the past, including like the lifestyles. So, yeah, why is it that the laws in the Old Testament don't jive with our sensibilities today? That's a valid question, and I think there are many answers out there. So, and even Jesus talks about how the Old Testament view of sexuality was temporary, I would argue. So, in terms of a divorce, I think Jesus said it was permissible because of your hard-heartedness or something like that. So
it's ironic that was, for some reason, the example my mind went to when I never actually did an episode on that topic.
Well, there you go. Now you can.
I was saving it because it's in my brain as like, you save away those kernels of like, ooh, if I can't think of a concept in any particular week, I've got my 5 or 6 like gold nuggets, and I was saving that one, and maybe that's why it's one of the ones that I haven't actually explored deeply.
I think
so yes, and several episodes in the podcast, I try to, the majority of the time, leave the tension there and not try to answer it in any way. But I would say every 4th or so question I get through it and I'm like, all right. I feel like I talked myself out of this one, or I came to a conclusion in researching about it.
Yeah.
Someone's answered this question really well. Of course, now as I speak, I can't think of any of those examples, but rest assured there are some.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got to take a break here, Dante. And when we come back, I do want to ask you maybe to provide some more examples and to also hear your story about, when was it that maybe some of these questions really started coming up in your mind, maybe even while you were a missionary through that experience. So we'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll jump more into that. And also, we've got a round of rapid questions coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. So stick with us through this short break from our sponsors.
listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
Evangelical Christians are talking about hell. What if we believe what we believe because we've always believed it? What if the gospel is really a matter of life and death? We want you to open your mind, open your Bible, and rethink hell. At rethinkinghell.com, evangelicals look at what the Bible says about hell, putting conventional and controversial views to the test.
Let's say there's this Christian apologist. You love their message, but have trouble finding their videos, their articles, or social media posts. How do you stay connected to them? We're on it. Defenders Media uses the tools of the digital age to create content for your favorite apologists. We give them more screen time, more digital soapboxes, and more presence to deliver more of the content that you love. That's what we do.
I know that social media is important to those of you who follow my work. Many respond to my videos and posts on Facebook and Twitter, but it becomes impossible after a while to keep up with it all and to continue with research. That's why I'm thrilled that we have found a solution, Defenders Media.
Whether it's a website, whether it's printed material, whether it's a question on graphics, I cannot do what I do and reach my audience without the help of Defenders Media. They have been integral in helping me to reach my audience.
Defenders Media ensures consistent content reaches your hand from today's leading apologists and apologetic ministries, like Mike Licona, Apologetics 315, the Veracity Hill Podcast with Kurt Jarris, and more.
To learn more, text the word Defenders to 555-888, and we'll send you a free PDF of the top 5 ways to share the gospel online. Thanks for sticking with us through that short break from our sponsors. If you'd like to learn how you can become a sponsor, you can go to our website, veracityhill.com, and click on that Patron tab. Sponsorships provide an opportunity for you to share about your company, business, organization, or ministry, or perhaps you're selling a book and you want to promote it on our program. We'd love to partner with you. And also, we're really grateful for our patrons. Those are folks that just chip in a few bucks each month, $5, $10, or $20 a month. And we'd love to help get your recurring support to keep us going and growing here on our program. We've been bringing Veracity Hill to you week after week, every Saturday for 3 years now. It's been a lot of fun. Like my guest today, it's kind of my way to keep doing and thinking about theology and other issues, broadly speaking, from a Christian worldview. And it's just a really fun opportunity, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. If you have, I'd love to get your review on iTunes, the Google Play Store, or even on our Facebook page. You can give us a review. My guest today is Dante Stack. He is the host of 365 Honest Questions About the Bible, which he just recently realized he's got to do another episode now on one topic he's been thinking about. He's the author of a couple different books, Fun with Jesus and Fun with the Apocrypha, and also he has the quadrilogy, Solve the World. Dante, that's your attempt to get into sort of a teen audience, female protagonist, Hunger Games style series. Is that right?
That's what I told you before we pressed play, but no, you're totally wrong. So I was the biggest apologist for the TV show Lost. I loved Lost with abandon. I was
except
the geek
for the last season, right?
So I was the geek that would go on the message boards in about season 4 when people started to really think it was skewing. I would be like, no, the writers know where they're going with this. It's all planned. And then you get to up until the very end, I was like, it's gonna work out. This last episode, it's gonna make it all worth it. And then it was so definingly clear that there was never the end in mind when they began. That I wanted to create an epic that I knew from moment one where the journey would lead.
Yeah.
So I started as a audio, like Hi-O Silver Away, an audio drama with sound effects and music. Yeah. And it was my baby. So I had 100 episodes. I was going to make it. and took me 3 years or so to make that, but did it. And then I've just recently converted those into the quadrilogy, or 4 novels.
Yeah.
So yeah, it, like Apology, I was just trying to answer the big questions, and do that in an artistic manner.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, on our program here, I know you said, I think you told me you watched last week's episode. We do a segment on the show called Rapid Questions, and maybe you listened to that. I'm not sure. Hopefully not. And so we asked.
I did.
Oh, darn.
I'm ready.
He's one of the few. We've only had a couple people like this that are actually prepared. So they're going to be short questions, and I will try. I'm looking at the list here. I'm going to try to ask questions I didn't ask last week. Some I like to repeat. So, all right, I'll start the game clock, and you are ready. So here we go. All right, Taco Bell or KFC?
Taco Bell.
Do you drink
KFC is way too everywhere in Russia, by the way. Go on.
Do you drink Dr. Pepper?
Occasionally.
Have you seen anything weird lately?
No.
What type of music do you listen to?
Don't. No, that's not true. That's not true. Sad things.
When's the last time you swam in a pool?
3 weeks ago.
What's your favorite time of the day?
Night.
Have you ever had to wear a uniform to school?
Yes.
What's your best childhood memory?
I wasn't ready for that one. Best childhood memory. Best childhood memory. Best childhood memory. One time I went to my parents when I was 3-4 years old, and I remember being like, "This is my name. This is my name, right? I own this name." And it was like this, my first encounter with like, I am attached to this external thing. And I just remember being like, okay.
You were a philosopher at a young age.
Yeah, so that was a pleasant memory. Probably not best, but pleasant.
All right, our buzzer's gone off. I want to ask you a couple more, though, here.
Yeah, I took way too much time. I wanted to get the Russia thing in because it was super weird that when I lived in Moscow, and there's a friggin' KFC at every street corner. They loved it. And they offered a lot of things that I think they don't here, but I'm all chicken related.
Yeah.
But McDonald's, not so much.
Huh.
KFC, every friggin' street.
Wow. Fascinating. Yeah. All right. I'm curious about this one. Pick a fictional character you'd like to meet.
Atticus Finch.
Huh. Interesting. Chris is very impressed with that answer. Atticus Finch. All right. So I want to ask a follow-up about the sad music.
Yeah.
Why sad music?
So we listen to music for emotional reasons.
Okay.
To feel connected to emotion. So for me, sad music either makes me really happy because I just find it entertaining.
Because you're like someone else is sad. So.
Or it like genuinely touches me.
Yeah.
The interesting now agnostic musician Derek Webb, who used to be part of Caedmon's Call.
Okay.
So he recently put out an album, I think called Fingers Crossed. But he has this one song on it, and it's like 5 minutes long. First 4 minutes. I'm totally spoiling this for you and your entire audience, but the name of the song is "The Spirit Bears the Curse." And for the first 4 minutes, you think this is this beautiful, maybe a little too cliche sounding worship song. And then you get to the last moment, and he finally reaches this high note, and he's singing to alcohol. And then it obviously recasts the whole song, and you're like, holy crap, I was feeling good about this, and now...
They pulled a Lost on you.
No, because clearly he knew what he was doing.
Well, that's true. Okay, fair.
So that's the song most recently, I guess I would say, in that genre of sad is maybe a trite word for it, but anywho, next question.
Oh, well, okay, so I want to get back to our discussion here about your worldview journey. So you had the opportunity to be interviewed by the East Oregonian, and there was a line that really caught my attention. It was the last one, so the author obviously, did this well. You said that I am a desperate believer in Jesus, emphasis on desperate. And so I wanted to ask you to maybe elaborate on that. What does it mean to be a desperate believer with an emphasis on desperate?
So, Paul, 1 Corinthians 15, he says, if Jesus hasn't been resurrected, then we, of all people, are the most to be pitied. I don't know if we carry that with us quite enough. That if we're wrong about this, Pascal's wager is not true.
Oh, I disagree. But okay. But I agree that we don't do enough emphasis on 1 Corinthians 15.
Okay. Well, so again, I speak of it being not true from an emotional standpoint of, I don't know, at least when I read Pascal's wager, the result I got out of this was similar to how Trump went to African American communities during the 2016 campaign and said, give me a try. It's not going to be any worse. That was kind of his
So
mentality.
you're not wooed by that type of argument.
That's not how humans work. I don't think we don't go into fundamental decision making. I'm saying humans. I don't know. It's not how I go into fundamental decision making.
Some humans, yeah.
This is, this is a 53% likely scenario, so I'm going to go with it.
Sometimes we make decisions like that, though, don't we? There are some maybe choices we make where we're just not as certain in others, but we still make a choice to go with one over the other.
I mean, yeah, okay, like in Batman Forever, the Riddler has Batman's girlfriend and Robin, and he's like, you can only choose one. And the movie, of course, is at the climax of the film. It's in the era of bad Batman films, but aren't we always in the era of bad Batman films?
Hey, Christopher Nolan. I mean, that was number 3 of Nolan's was but
this is pre-Nolan.
Well, I know, but you said aren't we always in the era of? I like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Everything else,
Even there's moments in Dark Knight Rises that are really nice. But anyway, so he is supposed to be given Batman this. Choose the girlfriend or choose Robin?
Yeah.
Answer. And it's just so indicative of how we enter those situations like, why not both? And somehow Batman manages to save both. And it's complete rubbish.
Yeah.
But that's, while being a cop-out for an end of a movie, which seems to be the theme of what I'm talking about today, cop-outs, I think that's how we enter into binary propositions.
Yeah.
We look for a middle road, or we look for a way that both can be true. But
or a third alternative altogether.
I
wanted to talk about. You mentioned 1 Corinthians 15. Basically Paul's saying if Jesus hasn't been resurrected, we're to be pitied. There was a study done within the last couple of years. It was something like, if they found the bones of Jesus, would you still believe? And so many people said yes, And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not even reading 1 Corinthians 15. Paul basically says if Christ is not risen, then we call God a liar. So there are so many Christians, I think you're right, that just sort of buy into this and do not take time to carefully consider what it is they believe. And they should be willing to follow truth, even if it makes them feel uncomfortable.
And for me, because I do have doubts, and many of the doubts linger, I have to hold this image in my mind that I'm drowning, and if God isn't here, then I'm doomed. If God isn't going to save me, then I'm I'm effed. There's no way out for me. And any of the other religions, they're not going to get me there either. So when I come across doubts, either internally or I come across, you've perhaps noticed, so many of our fellow Biolans have apostatized or have fallen into agnosticism.
Yeah, folks leave the faith. Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
It seems like it's happening a lot. And we have so many creature comforts, and it's so easy not to be desperate in this life living in the West. And we have Netflix, and I could just binge it all day and be pretty darn content about it.
Oh, and I don't think you would. I think people that do that, it's a temporary comfort. So when that show's over, when you've finished binging that show, it still haunts you.
Yeah,
and by you, I mean, it still will haunt someone. So while they might say they're content, I don't think they really are.
So, a crude response to this, but I think it's valid.
Watch any foul language. Let's be mindful, but I don't mind a crude, blunt response. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good to warn me. Before I got married, so the topic of sex was always at the forefront. And to a certain extent, I miss that. Now I'm married and I don't have to worry about crossing into sin or that sort of spectrum of temptation quite so much. But during those years, there was a daily cost to my faith, and it made me desperate because I wanted this thing and I wanted it really badly. Yeah. And I knew my body, everything in me was pushing me towards this temptation. And the only thing that could keep me from it was this belief, this conviction that the guy that's saving me here, this is not the path he has for me. This is not the way that he would have me go. And I want to honor the person who's saving my life in making this continued choice. Now, that's not to say I didn't sin in a myriad of ways then, and not to say that I am flawless or not sinning consistently now. But it was a daily felt situation.
Yeah.
Caused a sense of desperation. And maybe that's why I listen to sad songs, is to remind myself that this is happening, that we none of us get out of here alive. And death is very violent.
I like that. None of us get out alive.
The 1995 film Sphere, based on the book Sphere by Michael Crichton. Okay. There's a great line in it. A bunch of guys somehow see the future, or they find a spacecraft underwater, and they see this, and they figure out that, it's an American spacecraft from the future. What? How is this possible? But anyway, through a series of events, they're like, but wait, we don't know in the future. Whoever the spacecraft was, they didn't know that we knew about them when it happened. And so they come to this conclusion that the only way that could happen is that we never survived to tell people that this spacecraft from the future crashed, which means we die down here in the ocean looking at this thing. And I love that sense of nihilism, like suddenly being visceral. And we need that as humans. Maybe this face app that's storming Facebook right now is good for us. Like, we're all going to age.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a rant. Probably unfruitful.
I think what you've communicated are some very deep existential truths, and you really marinate on these truths. You let these truths soak into your soul, and I think that's admirable. I think more people should be like that than the folks that just Netflix and binge all day. They go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to sleep, they wake up, they go to work, they come home, they watch TV, they go to sleep. That Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living, and so I think your approach here is certainly one to be commended.
Now, I didn't go so far as Kierkegaard did to actually not marry the love of my life, therefore to keep me in that state of desperation.
Yes.
So perhaps I'm not that admirable.
Well, yeah, there's nothing I think that would prohibit one. That I think was just a personal choice.
Nor did I go the route of Origin and
woo! Yeah, that was something else what he did.
Cool dude. Love me some Origin.
Oh man. So
there was, I did want to say, speaking to our generation and seemingly just my friend base leaving the faith.
Yeah.
Another aspect of desperation is this feeling of I have to go down with this ship. And my faith, my convictions cannot be tied to whatever my external situation is. So that's been helpful, as because you have a doubt, and then all of a sudden this friend of yours expresses a similar doubt, but they've gone a step further and they've said, I no longer believe in God, or I no longer believe Christ is Lord.
Yeah.
I think there's again the emotional part of you's like, oh, well, there's a camp that I can be in, because we identify in little groups. So it's like, okay, now it's safe to migrate over there. The I'm going down with the ship mentality helps me kind of stick my hand. Say,
it's sort of an approach like, well, if you're dying and I'm dying, then we're all dying, and that's okay, type of approach.
I don't know if I understand.
So you say folks are a bit more comfortable taking that next step because other people have already taken it? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you kind of asked me this before the program. How did you phrase it? Something like you began studying apologetics and you still are an apologist or something like that. But there are folks that, like you said, that we know that have left the faith, and I think sometimes that occurs because people have the Ray Comfort, Kirk Cameron level of certainty, and they think that is required to be a believer. They encounter some doubt or question that they just can't seem to answer, and boom, the house of cards comes falling down. And so I think from my vantage point, I would say, well, we shouldn't have had that house of cards to begin with. That house of cards was not what the Bible talks about. Especially in the evangelical world, inerrancy is played up so much, and it's a form of inerrancy too. It's this sort of wooden literalistic approach or definition that is extremely popular, and I don't think that's what's. I mean, outside of America, inerrancy is not even like an issue. Like folks don't even care about it.
Yet every church I ever become a member of, I have to kind of cringe when I sign the dotted line because it's point number 1 on their 15 articles of faith every time.
So I think for a lot of folks that leave, they have these high expectations, and I don't think those high expectations were ever justified to begin with, and so I think that's why we see a number of our friends that have left the faith. That's why they leave. It's because they just didn't have a proper grasp. And I think that's not necessarily their fault. That could be their parents' fault or the church leaders' fault or their youth group leaders. Hey, all you got to do is read the Bible. That's not a sufficient answer when people.
I liked how you dropped your tone half octave to be a youth minister. That was good.
So it's not necessarily
really put me there.
They're not solely responsible. I think it's a problem that the church has brought upon itself. But that's why we do the program here, week after week, so we can talk about and discuss issues like this on the program. So
going into reading these non-canonical Gospels of Christ, my motivation was in all this out of desperation again of, okay, whether or not it's a nice saying, it's still very prevalent of Christianity isn't a religion, it's a relationship. And I vacillate on my thoughts on that particular saying.
Yeah.
And I've disavowed it, but then unavow it, and I don't know where I stand with it. I recently heard that, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that Luther says in his preamble to his translation of the Bible that the Old and New Testaments are the swaddling clothes of the Word of God, being that they swaddle Christ. So with them, they're very tremendously valuable because they hold within it the center of all life.
Yeah.
But if you take Jesus out, if you're just holding Jesus, then they're just rags.
Yeah, just rags.
And I found that very inspiring.
Yeah, nice. I like that. And that's so important. If I can interrupt, because there are some people that almost practically worship the Bible. And
not almost. They do.
Well, I mean, at least they don't explicitly say. Yeah, they don't explicitly say it, but I mean, functionally, it's as if they serve the Bible and they worship the Christian worldview more than worship the living Lord, and that certainly is concerning. So,
yeah.
I like Luther's quote. Yeah.
So I was going into reading these gospel accounts with the perception of, or the hope of, maybe there's something in there that's true about Jesus. I know they're all going to be biased. I know they all have these weird slants, but if we're supposed to long for Jesus, if we're supposed to want to abide in his presence, then every little fragment that we get of him should be a perfume. My relationship with my wife, when you love someone, you care about every little detail, and you categorize them and you remember them and you dwell on them. And so I can tell you all these little details of how my wife does life. It doesn't mean that she's doing it perfectly. It just means that I'm fascinated with her, so I'm going to pay attention to all those little things. So too, I think we should have the view of Jesus. So I was searching in reading these books, searching for that little thing. And part of that process was the realization that, man, I don't do this enough. And certainly, even in Scripture, and certainly the church doesn't do that nearly enough at all.
The church can barely get people to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, much less the New Testament Apocrypha.
Oh, and I'm not calling for people to read pseudepigraphal works or the New Testament Apocrypha. I simply mean dwelling on Jesus or dwelling on God without the expectation or the purpose of this is for absorbing a dictate, or this is for absorbing this edict or this truth, but just dwelling there because he's real and he has asked us and invited us to have a personal knowledge of him. I see a lack there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's right. People, even if they read the Bible, they might read it with the intent of how does this serve me? What can I immediately get out of it? Instead of reading it for what it is and reflecting on that and then getting something out of it as a result, like of its application. They'll try and basically input meaning into a text if they can all of a sudden discover 5 words strung together that now mean something to them. So yeah, I think that's, if I'm understanding you correctly, I think that's right.
Who knows?
Yeah. So it's certainly a call to take our relationship with God more seriously, and to not just read the Bible for worshiping the Bible, not just reading the Bible to strictly justify our beliefs or to get some personal, high out of it.
And I probably have an errant view of the Old Testament idea of fearing the Lord, but again, my personal journey is that the fear of the Lord for me is this desperate relationship with him, of keep going back to him and saying, I don't know if you're going to condemn me. I don't know if you're going to shun me on that day. Of you're going to be like, well, Dante, it turned out you were a goat, but I have to cling. I have to. And to me, this is this fearful relationship.
Well, I think you got the right approach. I think the fear of the Lord concept there is what you've described it. So, Dante, this has been great chatting with you. Unfortunately, we've got to close up shop here. But certainly it's been great to chat with you, to catch up with you, and to see more where your journey's taken you. And I hope you do sort of restart the podcast or add some few episodes here and there. 365 honest questions about the Bible. That's fascinating. And I will certainly provide some links on our website for folks to go check out your resources, including links to Amazon where they can buy your books and can learn more about your journey in looking at the New Testament pseudepigraphal and apocryphal books and the Old Testament ones as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and just for you guys listening, watching, write the reviews for Veracity Hill. Those reviews are like super helpful. So there we go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cool.
And I will do so for Veracity Hill.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
thanks. I appreciate that. All right. Well, we'll be in touch. God bless you, Dante.
All right. Thank you, Kurt.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
Well, that does it for our program today. I'm grateful for the continued support that we have with our patrons and the partnerships that we have with our sponsors. They are Defenders Media, Consult Kevin, The Sky Floor, Rethinking Hell, the Illinois Family Institute, and Fox Restoration. I want to thank our technical producer, Chris, and to our guest today, Dante Stack. I want to thank you, last but certainly not least, for listening in and for striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
You've been listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. This is a listener-supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.